How we doing, boys? Coming at you today with some draft guidance. So this is going to be breaking down the importance of the first two picks in your draft. So obviously, as we know, entering the season, the draft is one of the most exciting parts of fantasy football, but it's also one of the most critical parts, and even more so, the first two picks of your draft are the two picks you should be most concerned about nailing. Outside of that, the risk and reward and just the outcomes are so varied that you really want to narrow your focus on nailing these first two picks in your draft. So with that, I'm going to break down a couple numbers here. So let's say that the magic number that you need, just for the sake of the video, is 100 points per week on average to win a particular game. That might be a little lower depending on what your scoring system's like, and it's going to be different for every league because everyone has different scoring systems for the most part. But with that number, for the sake of the video, we're just going to keep it simple and round it out to 100 points. So first two picks of your draft, you can see here, if we combine any combination of wide receivers and running backs here, we're going to have a average of anywhere from 28 points or so up to the mid 40s. So we can assume that your first two picks are going to consume somewhere in that range of your total points throughout the year. So between, let's say, 25 and 40% of your total output on the year is going to be from your first two picks. And again, this is just the top 12 wide receivers and running backs. Obviously, there's the occasional tight end, like Travis Kelce is going to be mixed in there this year. Maybe Pat Mahomes or some other high-end quarterbacks. But ultimately, you can expect wide receivers and running backs going to make up the majority of your first two rounds in the draft. So with that, we have that range of outcomes of 25 to 40% of our total points in the year is going to come from these first two picks. In addition to that, we can assume that your quarterback is going to probably get close to 20 points a week, which is going to give you another 20% towards your 100 points per week scoring average that you're aiming for. So that means with your first two picks and then your quarterback, which you can take probably in the anywhere after the fifth round, you'll still get quarterbacks averaging close to 20 points a week. You're going to be looking at well over 50% of your total scoring coming from your first two picks and your quarterback. So that is basically why it is so critical to draft very well in your first two picks and divert all your focus to that, or a majority of your focus anyways. That's not to say that late round guys can't produce and end up in, top 10 or top 5 in their position. But our range of outcomes is so narrow here with the first, two rounds that we want to really focus that. Whereas you get deeper in the draft, your range of outcomes is tremendously broadened, where you could have a 7th round pick end up as one of the last players, or he could end up in the top 20. So we just know that we have the consistency in these particular players at the top of the draft, and that's why we are aiming to grab some of them. When you're making your decision to choose between them, we have a couple things that we want to look for. So obviously we want guys that have the consistent numbers week after week instead of a chance of putting up solid numbers. So we want to minimize our risk here with maximizing our reward. So that's why we're looking for consistency here. So you can kind of see the disparity too, right? So at the top of the running backs, we have Kamara, Henry, and Dalvin Cook all averaging in the mid 20s or low 20s. And then immediately after that, the next highest is an 18 points per game average, which is a 5-point drop off, which is certainly enough and significant enough for you to potentially lose that given week, obviously. So that is where we're seeing a disparity in value. Additionally, as we go even further from the top of the running backs to the bottom, so Kamara to Gibson, there's almost a 10-point differential. So obviously we're playing averages here, but those are some things to consider. So we want some guys that have some pretty high floors. And then same for wide receivers, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill averaging over 20. And it doesn't drop off as much. It only drops off about 8 points to the bottom where Allen Robinson is. This range of outcomes is significantly greater as we get deeper into the draft, where everyone's going to be probably below the 10-point average. So you can see the importance of drafting these guys. When you're evaluating these guys, I like to personally evaluate a couple things. One of them is just health in general. So that's like one of the most, important abilities to have, right, is availability, especially when you're looking for consistent players. You want guys you can set and forget, start every single week without health concerns, or without, competition concerns either. So we know, the depth of the position. So obviously running backs are a little more notorious for having a significant fall off after the first couple running backs, and we'll see that again this year. There's about 6 guys I would put at the top, and then after that the disparity increases greatly. So you can divert some of your focus into drafting guys like that. Wide receivers is a little deeper. It's a little easier for wide receivers to produce later in the draft than necessary compared to running backs. The other thing I look for is opportunity. So does the particular player have a lot of competition on their team? What percentage of their offense are they getting? Is it Devontae Adams, who has almost a 30% target share in his offense? Or is it Josh Jacobs, who now has some competition in his backfield with Kenyon Drake over in Las Vegas? So you need to consider some of these potential risks when you're making your decision, drafting inside the top 12 at any of your positions here, or just drafting your first 2 picks there. So just some things to consider for that. And you can make the same argument for how you approach drafting your quarterback, whether you're concerned about health, age, and targets like you would be for your receivers or running backs. Those are some similar concerns to have. You want to look at what their weapons are like, what their offensive line is like, some stuff like that, how the offense works in general. San Francisco is pretty run-heavy offense. New England's pretty run-heavy offense. So maybe those aren't the types of quarterbacks you want. You want like a Los Angeles Chargers offense where they're slinging the ball. That's why Justin Herbert is a better quarterback to take than like a Cam Newton or a Jimmy Garoppolo. But ultimately, you really need to focus your draft on just selecting these first 2 picks and then having a solid quarterback mid to later in the draft, because this is going to make up for a lot of the potential range of outcomes that you're going to get with these flyers in the middle of the draft. So hopefully that was informative for everyone, and we will catch you next time. Peace.